The moment the wedding hall fell silent, it was not because of the bride's entrance, not because of the music, and not because of the glittering lights. It was because a powerful female CEO suddenly stood up from the front row, her voice cutting through the air like thunder, calling out a single father who stood frozen at the back of the hall, unknowingly about to have his life changed forever. That single moment, filled with shock, confusion, and buried pain, was the beginning of a story about loss, dignity, second chances, and a love that waited years to be understood. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and hidden stories behind ordinary faces, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Daniel Carter never expected to attend a wedding that day. He was only there because he worked part-time catering on weekends, wearing a borrowed suit that felt too tight around his shoulders and shoes that pinched his feet. Life had not been gentle with Daniel. At 38, he was a single father raising his 7-year-old daughter Lily alone after losing his wife to illness 3 years earlier. Every morning began before sunrise, packing lunches, tying shoelaces, and hiding his exhaustion behind a soft smile so Lily would never feel the weight he carried. His dreams had quietly faded somewhere between unpaid bills, late rent notices, and nights spent holding his daughter when she cried for a mother she barely remembered. The wedding was extravagant beyond anything Daniel had ever seen. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen stars from the ceiling, white roses lined the aisles, and guests in tailored suits and elegant gowns filled the hall with laughter and confidence. Daniel moved silently between tables, refilling glasses and clearing plates, always careful not to draw attention to himself. He felt invisible, and invisibility had become his survival skill. As the bride prepared to walk down the aisle, Daniel found himself pausing for just a second, watching the scene with distant eyes. It was not desire or envy that pulled his gaze forward, but memory. Weddings reminded him of promises once made, promises he tried to keep even after fate had taken everything from him. At the front of the hall sat Victoria Hale, the CEO of one of the fastest-growing technology firms in the country. Known in business circles for her sharp mind and unshakable authority, Victoria was admired and feared in equal measure. Her presence commanded attention without effort, yet beneath her composed exterior lived a history of disappointment, betrayal, and regret. She had built her empire alone, brick by brick, after choosing ambition over love years ago, a decision she told herself was necessary but never fully forgave herself for. As Daniel stood still for that brief moment, his eyes unfocused, Victoria noticed him. Something about his posture, the quiet sadness in his expression, and the way he stood apart from the celebration struck her deeply. The room blurred around her as recognition surfaced, not of his face exactly, but of a feeling she thought she had buried long ago. Without thinking, she rose from her seat, her voice firm and commanding, calling attention to him and telling him to look at her instead of the bride. The hall gasped. Heads turned. Daniel's heart pounded as embarrassment washed over him. He felt exposed, as if his private grief had been dragged into the light. Victoria walked toward him, each step heavy with unspoken memories. Years ago, before boardrooms and billion-dollar deals, she had known a different Daniel. A younger Daniel, full of ideas and kindness, a man who believed in her before anyone else did. They had worked together at a small startup, sharing dreams over cheap coffee and long nights. When opportunity came knocking for Victoria, she chose ambition, leaving Daniel behind without explanation. Life moved on, but the echo of that choice never fully faded. Daniel barely recognized her at first. Time had transformed Victoria into someone untouchable, wrapped in power and confidence. Standing before her now, he felt small, ashamed of his worn suit and calloused hands. He assumed she saw him as everyone else did, just another struggling worker in the background of important lives. What he did not know was that Victoria saw every sacrifice etched into his face. She saw a man who had stayed loyal to responsibility when she had walked away. The wedding continued around them, but for Daniel and Victoria, the world had narrowed to a painful reunion. She learned, through whispered explanations from staff and her own quiet observation, that Daniel was a widower, a single father doing whatever work he could to raise his daughter with dignity. The knowledge shook her. While she had climbed higher and higher, Daniel had stayed grounded, choosing love over ambition, paying a price she had never been brave enough to pay. In the days that followed, Victoria could not forget him. She arranged to meet him again, not as a CEO asserting authority, but as a woman confronting her past. Daniel resisted at first, pride battling necessity, but life had taught him that refusing opportunity was a luxury he could not afford. Slowly, conversations unfolded. Not about regret alone, but about resilience, forgiveness, and the quiet strength it takes to keep going when no one is watching. Victoria offered Daniel a position at her company, not out of pity, but out of respect for the man he had become. He struggled with self-doubt, questioning whether he belonged in that world, but Lily's hopeful eyes reminded him that courage sometimes meant stepping into fear. As Daniel rebuilt his confidence, Victoria faced her own transformation. Success had given her power, but humility gave her peace. Watching Daniel balance work and fatherhood with unwavering devotion softened parts of her she thought were lost forever. Months passed, and the connection between them deepened, not as a dramatic romance, but as a slow, healing bond built on honesty and shared history. Daniel learned that his worth was never defined by his job title, and Victoria learned that love was not a weakness, but a strength she had denied herself for too long. The wedding that once symbolized everything Daniel had lost became the turning point that returned something even greater, hope. As the story nears its end, remember this moment, because stories like this are not just about chance meetings or dramatic interruptions. They are about the quiet battles people fight every day, about dignity in struggle, and about the unexpected ways life offers second chances when we least expect them. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to the channel to support stories that remind us of our shared humanity. Before this story ends, take a moment to comment below and tell us what this story made you feel and who it reminded you of. In the end, Daniel walked forward not just as a single father or a struggling worker, but as a man who learned that his sacrifices mattered, that his pain was seen, and that even in the most unlikely places, life can whisper a new beginning to those who never stop believing.